welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I am Renee Allen, the host of this podcast. Excited to be here. I want to talk to you about something that came up in my mind. Well, I've been struggling with it a little bit, and I tend to talk about the things that I see women dealing with and wonder if I'm dealing with it, if maybe you are too. And that is guilt that comes from letting go of people pleasing. And I've probably recorded a few episodes already about people pleasing because it's something that a lot of people do, but with ADHD, it's common to have RSD, which is the rejection sensitive dysphoria of really tuning in, sometimes accurately, but tuning in to if people are disappointed in you, if they don't like you or something like that. And then also making it up in your mind that they're thinking negative things about you. And then also you might be more empathetic. You might be somebody who wants people to be happy. Not something that we can control, but it is something that I want to control if I can. I want everyone to be happy. It doesn't always happen for sure. I mean, none of us are happy all the time, right? We have a wave of emotions, or if that's how you say it, a range of emotions. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're not. I know when my children were little, if they'd get hurt or something, I'd think, I wish I could just go back to 5 minutes ago when I didn't shut the door and she didn't get her finger caught in the door or whatever it was. And it's hard to see people sad. It's hard to have things disrupted and not be going well. And same with relationships. When we're getting along with somebody and they ask us to do favors and we say, sure, of course they're going to be happier because you've helped them with something that they needed help with, right? What if you can't keep doing those favors for people forever? What if you need to set some new boundaries? What do you do? And how do you cope with the idea that maybe some people aren't happy? I'm trying to get this, I guess it's not going to happen. I'm trying to adjust the camera and I'm just going to have to live with it because I know most of you aren't watching. But so how do you handle that? How do you handle disappointing somebody and not feeling bad about it and not coming to the rescue for everything? And this might be something that you don't even deal with, but if it is, it can be a struggle. And I know I felt like that. Last night I was thinking about it. I feel like lately I've gotten meaner, that if there's something I really don't want to do or can't do, and technically, physically, yes, maybe I could do it, but it would be too much to do it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean it's not possible. Sometimes you just say, no, I can't do that. You have another obligation. But when you don't have another obligation, or that it's giving up something of yourself, sometimes it's harder to recognize the importance of self and just say, no, I can't do it. Either not give a reason or give a reason. I know we're not really supposed to give any reason, but sometimes I do give reasons. And then it shows that the reason is more about me than actually physically not being capable of doing it. And maybe you could fit it in your schedule or you could move something around to make it happen. But would that be wise to do? And recognizing that there can be a difference of, can I help or should I help? And how do you decide? How do you decide? Often we know deep inside something isn't, you might know from past experiences, like that wore me out too much, or I can't run at that pace anymore, or I have other people that I'm helping that would take my energy away from them. Even when I had kids and stuff, years ago, I'm just, don't mind me. I'm just moving around in my chair again. But years ago, when I had my first two children, my daughters, I had my second daughter was a baby, and my first daughter was a 2-year-old. And I had a friend who worked in finance, I think, and had a nanny, and her nanny was sick. And her nanny came to her house and watched her boys. Well, her boys were about my girls' ages. The little boy was a little bit older, so instead of 2, he was maybe 3. And her younger one was a baby like my baby. And she said, "Can you watch my boys for at least one day, but I think maybe up to like 3 days or something till her nanny was better." And so I said, "Okay, I'll do one day." And it was not easy. It was not easy. I had a new baby. I had a 2-year-old, and this child and baby were not used to me. I'd never taken care of them before. This wasn't a friend that I hung out with during the day, and my little toddler played with her toddler because she worked her children, or her baby and little toddler were with the nanny. So I didn't know her kids very well at all. I just knew her, and I'd seen the kids, but they hadn't been playing in my apartment. They hadn't been in my care. Whereas another friend, maybe we went to each other's houses all the time, and their kids were a little more used to me, and vice versa. Even so, I don't know if it would have been too much, but I just remember that day. And this is back in the 90s. This is years and years ago. I remember the day being very chaotic. I remember the time that I took to take care of her baby boy, and her little boy was taking away from my baby and my child to where they were crying a lot, and, trying to change diapers or feed and all this stuff. And at some point I thought, I'm sorry to the other 2 little ones, but I just have to hold my own baby, and I have to take care of my little 2-year-old. And then they cried, and I felt really bad. I thought, no one's winning here. I'm stressed out, and the children and the babies aren't getting the care that they need. And so I told her I can't do it anymore. And it was good pay. Back then, this is early 90s, it was $75 a day. That was a lot then. And we didn't have a lot of money. There were months that we would just buy, I like regular cereal, regular Cheerios, and my husband likes Honey Nut Cheerios. And we would buy milk and Cheerios, and we would only see bowls and sinks, bowls and spoons in the sink at the end of the day, because all we ate was Cheerios. And we were fine only eating Cheerios. We had simple needs back then. So, and but there was a lot of time that we didn't have money. But to me, that money wasn't worth the stress and the lack of care I felt like my kids were getting, and her little ones were getting. And that seemed simple to do because I think I wasn't just basing it on myself. I was also basing it on my kids and on her children. I felt like they deserved better care. But there's other times that it's only me in the equation, and I don't know if you do this, where there's only you in the equation, that you're thinking, that's too much for me, and yet I'm still going to do it. Are there some times of your life that you can make those decisions easier? When you think about it, do you have anybody that you have a hard time saying no to, that you jump in and help? And if you have kids, if you have adult kids, I've been talking to some of my friends with adult children, that they're relying on their parents a lot more than we did when we were younger. We just thought, I got to do it on my own. We didn't really think of asking our parents for help. The most I helped, and I'm not saying like I'm doing the right thing all the time, but the most I asked for help was after I had a baby. My mom would come and stay for a week and help out with the other kids. And the first baby she came to after my first baby was born. But she would help with the kids and make meals and things like that. And it was super, super helpful. And one of my sons was born on New Year's Day, first baby of the year. It was all exciting. And my mom was a school teacher, so she had to leave once I got home from the hospital, and my mother-in-law came. But those were times that I felt like, I know I need the help. Can you come? If they hadn't, could I have done it? I'm sure I could have, but it sure was helpful. It was really helpful. I remember even when they would leave, I'd think, I don't know that I can do my normal things again. Like, please don't leave. In fact, my mom remembers me saying once, we drove together to a grocery store and I put my kids in the cart and my baby was probably in a baby sling or something. And she remembers me saying, no, don't go. And she needed to go. But there are times that I've asked, and I'm not saying it's bad to ask, but when you're asked and it's too much for you, what do you do? And do you have boundaries? I find that setting boundaries initially, like if there's something like, no, I can't do that. If you've never done it, it's way easier to say no because you've never done it, right? You just said that no that one time. They may not even ask again, or another child will ask, or another person. And you've already set that boundary. You're comfortable setting it. You've received some kind of response from somebody like, oh, okay, or oh, you sure? Whatever it is, and you've already dealt with it. So you have that experience. There might be other times that you've, as my mother would say, bent over backwards. You've jumped through hoops. You've done all these things, all these cliches, because it's just showing that it's not just a simple thing to help that person. And you've done extra, 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 and you start to realize, oh, I can't do this anymore, or I can't do this much. And so you're trying to redefine how you do that. And sometimes when I do that, and I try to make those new boundaries, sometimes people don't quite get it. They think that I'm just thinking it through, or that maybe I still will do it because I have before. And that can be hard. That can be hard to communicate a boundary and not feel bad about it if you are a people pleaser. If you're somebody who not only wants to help others or make people happy, but also doesn't like the feeling when somebody else isn't happy with what you've done. That probably is a big people pleasing loop. But let's talk about why people are people pleasers in the first place. If you're a people pleaser, it's not necessarily being too nice. It doesn't mean you walk around and you're just so nice to everyone. It's usually a pattern that you get into to feel secure, almost safe in your role of I'm this person and this person, almost like you're a hero. Even back in the days when my kids went to school and I helped in the classroom, and can you do this? Can you help with this? Sure, sure. You get acceptance, you get praise, you get connected with that person, and you're not having any conflict because you're not saying, no, I can't do that. You're saying, yes, I can do it. So if you have a hard time with confrontation or conflict, you can avoid conflict, well, at least in that relationship, maybe not within yourself, by saying yes and by saying yes. And then it's also some sort of protection, some kind of armor from feeling like someone's upset with you. And it might sound like, well, that sounds a little harsh. Like, are people really upset if you say no? Maybe upset's not the best word, but maybe you feel like they might have a different opinion of you. Even with me being a yoga teacher, when I need to go on a trip or I'm sick or something, I have to find somebody to sub my classes, another yoga teacher to take over the class. Rarely, rarely, rarely have I ever canceled a class. And that's only like if it's my own class that I'm renting space for, if it's a really small group. And maybe I say, we can't do it. I'm going to be, everyone's going to be on vacation. Let's just have the next 2 weeks off or something that I'm managing more. But when I work for somebody else or at another place, there's some dependability for that studio or that gym to have a schedule that's set and to have that class happening, whether I'm there or not. So I find somebody to sub the class. And the nice thing, at least in my mind, to do would be able to sub for other people when they need subs. And when I first started teaching yoga, I subbed like crazy. I subbed like I would get an email. That was back when we didn't really text. So it was like an email request. And sometimes I'd be bummed if I didn't see it as early as other people, like, oh, how many can I do? And I was also looking for so many opportunities to teach, like, oh, I'll teach here, here, here. That'll be so fun. I'll meet these new people and all this. And over time, I've learned I can't go in that many directions. And some sub opportunities aren't that fun when people are disappointed that you're the teacher, like if they don't know you. I find this more common with older people, and I'm older, but I mean, even, older than me, 10, 15 plus years older than me, they seem a little more, but the other teacher does it this way. And, they get used to the person that they're with, and my style probably isn't the other person's style. I try to find out as much as I can about the other instructor, go to their class in advance, and try to do something similar, but still be myself and use what I've learned to teach. But I've basically been changing my response level over the years, and now I hardly ever, ever, ever sub. And part of me thinks, is that bad? Is that mean? Are people going to think, well, I sub for her and she never subs for me? But there's a lot of factors that have helped me make peace with this, such as availability. Do I actually have availability on the day that they need? A lot of the times the answer is no. Or to tell myself there are other willing people to sub, and maybe they could use the money and they're happy to do it. But still, it's some kind of an exchange. And so I have an idea in my mind of what they may think of me, of, wow, Renee never subs, or she hardly ever does anymore. And whether or not that's accurate, I don't know. But we all tend to do that at times, is make up a story in our mind of what somebody else may think of us, and then either have it weigh on us or base future behavior on that. And we need to base future behavior on our values and what we need to do to support ourselves and the people in our lives, and not on things that aren't even accurate. But it's not easy when you fear criticism, or you fear rejection, or you fear some kind of, what is the word where, like, you say something and I want to say like a throwback, but it's not a throwback. It's like you say something and then they respond, and you don't want that response. You want to just not have any conflict at all and not have them question you or anything. And we could say they shouldn't question us, but if it's somebody that we have helped in the past and they're curious, or they are relying on you, and because it has always been your pattern to do that, then you have to find a way to say, I know I've done this in the past, but I'm not going to be able to do that anymore. But it's really hard to stick with that if the other person doesn't take that as a no. And that can be really challenging for a people pleaser, for sure. For sure, for sure, for sure. Let's also look at, just kind of explore why this may be common for women. Not saying that men never do it, but for women in our society, girls are often rewarded for being helpful, being cooperative, being easygoing, saying, sure, I can do that, self-sacrificing. And we learn that when we're young, and there are some exceptions, but girls often are the helpers, like, oh, let's go help in the kitchen. Oh, let's see what we can do to help that person. They're sad, whatever it is. And we might sacrifice what we have going on to do that, and might not, want to push any buttons or push back. That's what it was, is the pushback. When I said, if you say something, they might do something back, it's the pushback. And you just see that from the time that you're young, when you do that, that it makes the grownups around you happy. And it makes the people around you happy because you're helping them. Even when I was growing up, when we would have family dinners and holidays and stuff like that, and it was time to get out the pie or the cake or whatever, most of the people would stay seated wherever they were. I mean, maybe we'd all come together to blow out candles or something like that. But one or two people would cut all the cake and and get the ice cream, and then people would be sitting down, and it was like you were a waitress or a server or something. You go over and say, "Do you want a piece of pie?" And you'd pass it all out, and it was what you did for your guests if it was your house. But a lot of times, even if it wasn't our house, we would do that at our grandma's house or whatever. The girl cousins would go in the kitchen, and we'd go take some cake, and then we'd go in and say, "Who wants ice cream with their cake?" And nobody had to go and get it. And I'm finding, because we just had a birthday on Sunday, my husband's birthday, but I'm finding that after a dinner, after a birthday dinner, we do cake and there's ice cream. I don't want to do all of that. That's where I'm trying to make a new boundary of go ahead and, somebody get the ice cream scoops. Am I the only adult in the kitchen? No. Do I need to go get the ice cream scoops? Everyone either knows where they are, can figure out where they are. There are a lot of adults in the room. Does one person need to scoop up the ice cream for everyone, or can everyone scoop their own ice cream? Everyone go ahead and, if you want ice cream, go ahead and scoop some. And here's a knife, go ahead and cut the cake. But I feel like the tradition of me doing all of that as a mom has created an environment where that's still the expectation. And I'm trying to change that. And it's not as easy as I thought. It's not as easy as I thought. I told my husband after dinner, which I kind of feel bad because it was his birthday, but I just said, I don't really like doing these birthday dinners anymore unless I'm picking up pizza and have paper plates, because I don't know. One thing I didn't used to hate making dinner like I do now. I used to actually love to cook. And over the years, and definitely before I knew I had ADHD, making dinner became more and more overwhelming and became less common. Like I hardly ever cook dinner anymore. But when we have gatherings, I do. And I do assign things out and stuff, but I'm still responsible for the meal and getting the groceries and doing all that. And I know we can change those things if we want to, but it's really hard. It's really hard. So why can ADHD make this even harder? Well, when you have ADHD, you may have some tendencies that you're fighting, and they call this masking, when you pretend not to be a way that you are. Or if you didn't learn how to mask, which I feel like in a lot of ways I didn't really do much masking. I was more told not to do what I was doing, like sit down in your chair, stop blurting out the answers. Why do you talk so much? Some of the things, like with the overwhelm, a lot of people are called procrastinators, or that they're lazy or irresponsible. I didn't really hear that because that part of my ADHD didn't intensify until probably menopause, I think, for me. I started learning tools when I would feel like, gosh, I don't feel like making dinner anymore. So one of my tools was to stop making dinner, but was also to come up with creative things, like redefine what dinner is. We can just make smoothies. We can just make popcorn. Everybody just go grab something. So it's changing the rules. That was kind of my tool there. But also, if it is like some gathering, I love to have people over for dinner, which sounds weird because I don't like to cook dinner, but I've always loved to have people over. And so when I do, that's enough of a motivation that I can get myself to do it. It's still stressful. I still don't love it, but I can get myself to do it. But I think for me, I haven't heard feedback to myself of being lazy or irresponsible, but I've heard it of other people. Like you think of school, the kids who didn't turn in their homework, or they didn't get their work done, or you left your homework at home or whatever. And even when I look at my own kids, my youngest son who has ADHD, when he would forget things, and I'd say, you're going to forget, like clean up your room or whatever it was. I'll do that later. And I'd say, you're going to forget. You're going to forget. And I look at those things now, and the things that I thought of a child who didn't do that, I was resisting those behaviors, right? And it wasn't that hard for me to resist it back then. But I knew if somebody's room was messy, we thought of that person as being lazy. Or if somebody didn't turn in their homework, they just they weren't responsible. They didn't do their homework. And if they forget it at home, they need to come up with a way to not forget. And I mean, I was the mom that would drive my kids' homework to school, but I was at home. Not a lot. A lot of kids don't have a mom who's at home during the day that can do that, or even another parent, a dad, or somebody. So, whatever negative feedback you've grown up hearing, that can be things that could be said to somebody with ADHD, like you're not trying, you're selfish, you don't even want to do this. You could do this. Why are you being selfish? Why don't you want to help somebody else? All of those things that I heard from my parents, my relatives or something when they talk about, like I went to somebody's house and it was so messy. There was that phrase, what does that woman do? Sit around and eat bonbons all day? That was before we had Netflix and you could think of binge watching TV shows. But sometimes we do just need a break, or we can't get ourselves to do things. And so negative feedback, even with being somebody who doesn't help, like if you were on the PTA or a booster club or something at your school, you knew that the parents who were involved were seen as these great parents. She's so involved. She's the president of the PTA. And he just, led this whole program and whatever it is, that for the kids, or she got a grant. So they have a new playground at the school and all these parent volunteers. And if you're saying no to something and somebody asks you to do it, or they send around a sign up sheet, are you signing up for something out of guilt or because you want to do it? Because you can do it because it actually works in your life? Or are you just doing it because you think, I have to do it? They're asking me and they know that I'm seeing this. I always hated that. I like it better when you get an email now and you can just reply if you sign up on a Sign Up Genius or something. But even that, I still deal with the guilt for sure. And another reason that ADHD can make this harder is the rejection sensitive dysphoria, which I mentioned before. And I'll just read this. Although RSD is not an official diagnosis, ADHD experts describe it as an intense emotional response to perceived rejection or criticism. Perceived means it can either be actual, you can see it in their face, you can feel it, you could hear it, or it could be perceived by you, but it's not accurate. But it is an intense emotional response within you. And so it can make it hard for you to let somebody down. And somebody, if somebody asks you to do something and you say, no, I can't, and they say, oh, all right, you can interpret that in 20 ways. It could be somebody else might think, oh, all right, like I'll find somebody else. And for you, it might be, oh, all right, I don't know what to think about you, like, I don't know why you can't do it, like whatever it is. What do you have that's so important? And, and I'm not trying to make this like there are people who are trying to take advantage of us, but especially if you've helped somebody in the past, it might be a letdown for them. And that might create anxiety in you, not just in the moment, but for days and weeks. And you could be thinking about that, like, I said this to them. I let them know I couldn't do that. Or even just telling somebody afterwards that it was too much. I started doing that a little bit more when I do feel like I'm not being valued, or that that people are expecting more of me than I feel like they should. I run that through my head afterwards because I feel like me saying that just created a lot of emotional angst inside of me. And even though on the outside it might seem like I'm okay, but afterwards I think, it's that are you human or are you dancer? I'm thinking, am I just setting a boundary, or am I becoming a mean person? And I really don't think it's a mean person, but it feels mean to me because it's not my usual giving, giving, giving. Does that make sense? So it's redefining that and learning how to regulate it. So the third reason why ADHD can make this harder is emotional dysregulation. And that means your emotional response is not balanced. It's not as close to the center of feeling even killed as somebody else. If you feel like, "Oh, I wish I could have helped him," that's kind of like an easy come, easy go. You felt it for a second, but you can't. It's more flippant. But the guilt or the anxiety that comes with it, or the sense of a conflict when there may not really be one, and it may not even be just during and after. It could be for weeks or a month before. Have you ever had that happen when somebody's going to ask you to do something and you know that you're going to tell them this time you can't? And then you run it through your head for however long of how to let them know, how to say, talk to a friend or two about it and mention it to somebody else. Like, this is what and I feel bad and da, 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 but I can't, and you just go through this whole spiral. And the thing is you feel those emotions, not just in the moment of doing it and not just after, but even before. It can consume a lot of time and effort and energy, which is not fun. It's an ADHD fun. And of course, women with ADHD or anyone with ADHD aren't the only people that are people pleasers. But there's a lot of reasons why it is common, and there are reasons why it can affect us more when we try to break that cycle. I really do admire people who break the cycle. And honestly, I see them as being a little cold-hearted too sometimes. So maybe it's my own definition. And I say that with respect. Like, I wish I could just be that. Like, nope, nope. And sometimes I wonder how many of my relatives listen to this. But my Aunt Donna is somebody who's more like a nope, sorry, nope. She has no problem saying a no to somebody. And I kind of I admire that, but it does feel a little cold, but I don't think she's being cold. And actually, as she's getting older, I don't know that she does that as much, but I'm not in her life on a daily basis, not even once a year, but I did see her a year and a half ago. And I thought, has she always been this warm? Maybe as a younger person, not seeing somebody as you get older, you get closer ratio wise to their age. Does that make sense? Like if you're 20 years younger, but you're 60 and they're 80, that's closer. Like that 20 years feels closer than when I was 5 and she was 25. Does that make sense? It's a different stage of life for sure. But we're getting closer emotionally, I guess. um, so there's something that is called the boundary backlash. And if you've ever felt that, and maybe you've even given that to somebody, that the backlash of you you can let somebody know this is my boundary. And when you set the boundary, I think this is really helpful to see it this way, because when I see make up a new thing in my mind, it can help me distance myself from the situation emotionally a little bit. But most of the time when you set a boundary, people aren't going to celebrate. So we know that. We can expect that, right? They're not going to be throwing up confetti and going woohoo and fireworks. Yay, Renee said no. I've always asked her. She's always done it, but now she doesn't want to. Yay, I'm so excited. They're not going to do that. So we know not to expect a celebration. We may even expect some disappointment and some surprise. And we might even be surprised that they're not curious about why there's a change. They might be curious, why? And that why often is to be able to push back, to kind of say, but what if, and renegotiate. And that can be hard because you're trying to set a boundary So it's like end of story, and a negotiation is not an end of story. It's a let's keep the story going. And then you're like now I got to come up with my new way to say my boundary, and it can be hard. So when you set boundaries, they may push back. They might act disappointment. They might even get irritated. And if they're your kids and if they're teenagers, they might even get upset, like, why? And really do that. Might even think you're selfish. What do you have going on? Especially, I know when my kids were younger, and I don't, maybe I'm judging more when I was younger. I remember asking my mom to do something, and it wasn't anything like major, but like to mail something to me when I was in college, and it would take her forever to do it. And I think, how hard is it to go to the post office? Well, now as an adult, I've been an adult for a long time. It can be really hard to go to the post office. It can be really hard to fit something like that into your life when you have a lot going on. But when I was in college, I thought, I'm the busiest person. I'm a college student, so I was more of that, like questioning and being irritated or something. And when we're trying to have these workable relationships, and when they don't go how the other person plans on it, or we've had an experience where somebody else does something that's disappointing us, we might judge them according to what we've once thought or what we've once done, or what the worst backlash or pushback was from somebody, to where they challenge you, and then you start to fear, like, oh, is everyone going to react that way? And you can try to help yourself see, I got out of that one time, I'll get out of it again. It can be hard. When your new behavior changes their plan, it can be hard for them, and they have to adjust, and it would be easier for them if you adjust than it is for them to adjust. So they're trying to find, as humans, but even you look at the animal kingdom, I say animal kingdom, then I say people, but people too. But an animal is going to find the way to use the least amount of energy in the shortest amount of time to get something done. Or if it's better for their, like to get the kill, if they're an animal or something, to be slow about it, that's still getting them that result quicker than if they did it in a way that wasn't efficient. And so when anybody that we disappoint that's trying to accomplish something and we've helped them before, it's going to be simpler for them to negotiate with you or try to talk you into it or just one more time or whatever than it is for them to go back to the drawing board and start over and find somebody else. So, now this is interesting. So this is a boundaries expert. I don't know who this person is. I could look him up. As boundaries expert Nedra Glover Tawab. She's a licensed therapist, author, and relationship expert. Born in 1983. I'm probably saying her name wrong, so I apologize. Nedra, I can say Nedra right. I don't know how to say her last name. But she explains that healthy boundaries reveal which relationships were relying on you doing too much, or maybe you relying on them doing too much. So when you find that, when you're setting boundaries, she's written some books. Set boundaries, find peace, drama-free, the balancing act. Set boundaries, find peace. Maybe I'll have to add that to Libby. Do you ever listen to audiobooks? But when you have to find new boundaries or somebody else is finding those with you, you're finding who was giving more than they're able to anymore. And maybe it's always too much for one person. Maybe the times just change, or you change and your conditions change, or your health changes. It doesn't automatically make one person bad or the other person bad. It's just no longer balanced. And you're trying to find that balance, and everyone's having to adjust. You're adjusting by saying no. They're adjusting by having to think of something else besides you being involved to help them. Bum, bum, bum. So let's see what else I can find here. So earlier I mentioned that my, I guess, emotional dysregulation that was affecting my thoughts last night was I think I'm becoming more of a mean person by saying no to when somebody asks me to do something and say, no, I can't do that. And, and I have a hard time. I have to pause when I say that because I do feel bad. Like I'm feeling bad inside. That's just my brain, my body having to process that for half a second. But there is a difference between being mean and having boundaries. And logically, I know that. But I'm going to read this to see if you ever confuse the two. So, why do you feel mean? Because you say no? Because maybe it is something that you really could do, but you don't want to do, or you know it'll max you out. And the examples I gave earlier, at least in my mind, and maybe they weren't super clear, were more giving of a lot of time. But I'm thinking about just earlier this year, I was at my parents' house and I was helping my mom. My dad was out of the hospital and had to do physical therapy every day and on a feeding tube and had a lot of needs. And my mom had just this whole day full of doing all these things. So I came to help. And my cousin had been there before me, and she was a huge help. So my cousin did a lot of the physical therapy exercises and who knows what else. She did a lot of things. And I totally appreciate for her for that because it's just truly an act of service. And she did it quite a bit. But I traveled there and I really felt like I wasn't there maybe even a whole week, maybe 5, 6 days. I can't remember. But I felt like I was throughout the day just saying, no, no, no. I was doing things, I was helping, but there were a lot of things that my mom was asking me to do. I'll have you do these physical therapy exercises. I'll have you put his medicine in the feeding tube. And so many things that she was asking me to do. I look back now, and I don't know if you do this with your ADHD, but I look back now to my childhood, and there's some things that I was super willing to do. My mom would write us a little chore list and, get up, make your bed, uh, do the dishes, whatever they were. I could do them. But every once in a while, there was something that my brain couldn't figure out. That was one thing. So it's that executive dysfunction of I don't understand the system. It's hard for me to do it. I don't want to do this. And then there's also the impulsive part of me. I feel locked in trying to do something that I don't quite understand and I don't really want to do it. And I was just talking on Zoom with my parents the other day about my dad would say, let's go out and learn to change a tire. And to me, it was just like on, Charlie Brown, where the adults are speaking. I didn't know what my dad was saying. All of the things, all the steps to change a tire is like today me watching a YouTube video with instructions of doing that. I need it written down. I need like when you get some order with the furniture and it shows a picture of all the parts and has numbers by them, and I need to categorize that and figure it out in my brain to be able to do something like that. And just hearing it and seeing it, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, okay. And he probably did that 3 times. And then when I took driver's ed, which they used to do in high school, and they had us learn the parts of the engine, it's the only time in high school that I could not get a good score on my test because it just didn't make sense to me. Parts of the engine, how am I supposed to remember any of these shapes? How am I supposed to memorize any of this? It wasn't written down like a list. It was a picture. It was to look at a picture. And the irony is that my husband fixes cars and restores cars, and it's not his profession, but that's something he's done since he was young. It works with his brain. It doesn't work with my brain. And my mom, another memory I had is my mom taking us all outside and saying, I want you to do the gardening. And we'd all go out there and she'd give us, I don't know, some shovel and different things. And for some reason, gardening, unless I'm doing something really simple, like here's some strawberries, plant some strawberries. I've done that on my own and I've planted bushes. I keep it very, very simple. But whatever it was, it didn't make sense in my brain and I was getting stir crazy inside. And and then I'd, use my creativity of, hey, want me to make lunch for everyone? Because that's back when I loved cooking. And that made my mom real happy because she didn't have to think about lunch. And she stayed outside, did the gardening with my brothers, and I made lunch. Called everybody in. I was the hero because I understood how to make lunch. I didn't understand how to do that. So there's a lot of things that I say no to that I don't understand. Or maybe I could learn to understand, but I know that it takes so much mental, like brain power, and my executive dysfunction is way worse than it used to be. And so when she said there's some printouts on the wall of physical therapy exercises, to me, it's just like, like in some foreign language. And I'm just thinking, can I do this instead? Or why don't you do this now? And then she'd say, well, Kelly did it when she was here, or, somebody else did it. And I was hoping you could do it. And I'm feeling bad because I want to help her. And yet I had this fight in me of just thinking, I can do this instead. Can I do this instead? And so I present something else. And same with the feeding tube thing. And I knew that if I did that, and she even told me, I have it all written down and you can see what you measure. And I said, I know that I would mess that up. I know to take the information and that whether it's whatever the measurement is, the executive function, and I wasn't explaining it to her in this detail, but to remember what I've read, put it into an action, put it into the feeding tube and be responsible for that. And she said, but you can check things off. And I said, I know, but even if I check things off, I might not remember if I checked off the last thing, like if I get distracted really easily. And the thing is my mom has some executive dysfunction too. So I know it was hard for her, but I told her, if you're going to need to continue doing this, the more you do it, the easier it'll get for you. And I hated putting that on her. And I still feel guilty about it. This was in January because I said no, I had a limit and I was prioritizing my own, not going crazy in my own head feeling that I get when the only way I can describe it is maxing out. When my brain is on overdrive because I'm trying to process things that aren't processing in a clear way. And I feel like in the past 10 years, and especially understanding ADHD, I'm saying no to more things like that because I just know I'll be frazzled. And yet I feel guilty because I think maybe they're frazzled or they need this and that sort of thing. The nice thing is after that visit, my mom has most memories of all the things I did to help. But I told her at the end, I feel like I walked around saying no to you a lot because that no took I didn't say this part to her, but that no took a lot out of me and I felt a lot of guilt with that no. So those no's were echoing in my mind when I thought I could have just gone and said, what do you need help with? Okay, I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that. But instead, I did the things that I thought I could do. And then when I had downtime, like where I could put the AirPods in, like I like to do to get a lot done, I did things like the dryer doors and washer drawers were on backwards the way they opened. And one of them wouldn't change, but I actually watched a video for that. No, I didn't watch a video. I think I did a combination of a video and I found the book, but I had to rewatch about 10,000 times. But I was able to do it because nobody else was around at that point. No one was home. And I had just kind of all the time in the world. And I knew I had the space for my brain to figure it out. But you might have to say no to some things because even though other people can do them and you feel like you should be able to because they can, if you can't or if it leaves you frazzled, then say no to that. But remember that having boundaries is having limits, protecting your needs, your time, your sanity is what I kind of feel like more as my ADHD has increased, and at least the way it affects my executive dysfunction, my behavior. But saying no. Being mean is actually disrespecting them, saying rude things, mean things, attacking them. Yeah. So being mean is different. the man that honked at me and then passed me and like put his horn down just because I slowed down in between stoplights when no one could go. He was being mean. That happened today. But I have a lot of control when I drive. I don't honk back. I know some people honk back in retaliation, but I know that that pickup's a lot bigger than I am and that they're already in a bad mood and they're already a bully. I don't want to see what they would do if I honked back. So I learned long ago that somebody followed me when I don't even know if I honked back. But yeah, they can be reactive. So I'm fine, obviously. It was a long time ago. um, so a boundary is giving information. It's not name calling. It's not saying something mean. And maybe the intention behind your boundary would be also helpful for you to evaluate. Because if you are making that boundary with some judgment toward the person that is asking, have you ever done that where somebody asks you to do something and you just think, why are they doing this? Why are they, who do they think they are? Like I already did this. I don't know if you've ever done that. I have. I have. I don't know if I've done it recently, but if you have a judgment behind your boundary and think, well, if they just did this, and this, they wouldn't even need to ask me, then maybe that's something to evaluate because maybe you are mean in your heart and you take out that judgment and then just give that information. Yeah, the mean would be, I can't believe you even asked me to do that. That'd be disrespectful. The boundary would be, sorry, I'm not going to be able to do that. Guilt shows up when you think you did something wrong or when you interpret from somebody else that you did something wrong, at least that they view it that way. People pleaser might not think they did something wrong, but they did something different than what they've done before or different than what the person expected. That's different than I did something wrong. If you haven't harmed anyone, you shouldn't have that guilt. And you might have had a previous rule of, I'll always be available. I'll always drop things to help someone. I won't disappoint them. I'll keep everyone happy. I'll put myself last. I'm going to read those one more time. If you are a people pleaser, do you feel like you need to always be available, never disappoint anyone, keep everyone happy, put yourself last? If you live long enough, you know that you can't keep everyone happy, but you might want to do what you can to contribute to that. And I've found that even when I do those things to help someone be happy, it could be something that I didn't even control and they're still not happy. You know what I mean? Like you find that you did that and they're still not happy about something. You're not adding to their overall happiness. And sometimes that bothers me too. So when I'm trying to keep everyone happy and I can't. Or even like, like when my kids were younger, we went to Disneyland, we were walking in and they were, we were on Main Street and they were arguing about something. And I'm like, you're at the happiest place on earth, or Christmas morning and somebody's upset about something. That hasn't happened in a long time. But you know what I mean? Those times that you feel like they're all set up for perfect happiness. All the conditions in the world can't lead to happiness. And it's not your responsibility to help them be happy. My daughter is so good at this with her kids of saying, I can see that you're upset. The answer is still no. I love that. I wish I had learned that when I was younger. Not to blame anybody, but it's just something that's talked about more. We didn't know what people pleasers were when I was growing up. Not at all. But when you set a boundary, expect discomfort. If there isn't any, that's great. The discomfort might only be within you. It might not even be for the other person. You might just be giving them information. And sometimes if you wait on letting somebody know, especially if you're counseling something that you've said you could do, you're helping them out by letting them know sooner. Dun, 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 dun. Also, separate feelings from fact. The feelings may be feeling guilt or some anxiety or fear of upsetting someone, but the facts, you can ask yourself, was I respectful? Was I honest? That's important. Be honest with yourself and with others. Did I communicate clearly, respectfully, and do it in the best way possible? And you don't always have to give details, especially if you don't know the people very well. Maybe you don't even have to give details if you do know the people well, but I'm still learning that. Dum, dum, dum. I think that's where I'm going to stop because I do have class to teach in 30 minutes. I should probably eat something. But just a few tips if you do have rejection sensitivity, whether it's the full blown RSD with a lot of intensity or just at any level. But you can always ask yourself, are they really upset? If they are, there's the whole thing of let them, that's how they are. I can't really control that. I usually say stuff like they'll get over it. Not always true. Not always true. Hasn't always been proven. And have they changed their opinion of me? Sometimes I'm surprised when I've disappointed somebody and then I get a birthday card or something and, they tell me that I'm wonderful. And I think, oh, I thought they, you know, I thought that their opinion of me had come down a few notches because I wasn't as available as I always have been or haven't been doing as much for them. Sometimes I'm surprised. And so, do you have evidence that somebody is thinking less of you? Are you making it up? And do you need evidence that they think more of you by getting a card? It can be helpful. And just to help other people, maybe if somebody else is asking you you ask somebody else to help you with something and they can't do it, maybe validate them and let them know you still appreciate, that they got back to you quickly or no problem, no worries. I'm sure I'll find somebody else, even if you don't think you can, whatever it is. And maybe that's my people pleasing and making sure they feel okay about it. But I think it is nice to help people that when they've set a boundary to let them know you're okay in case they think you're not. Yeah. Sometimes if we set a boundary, we might try to fix the discomfort that we feel within ourselves or we see in the other person by over explaining, by apologizing. I'm so sorry. I would, but blah, 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 blah. Go ahead and give up our boundary. But instead, if you feel the need to do that, just wait and just kind of let it settle and try to resist going in and putting band-aids on it. And remember, somebody can be upset with your boundary. They can be disappointed. They can still respect you, love you, appreciate you. And they don't have to be exclusive. But if they do change for some reason how they feel about you, then that was a disproportionate relationship. Some people do get used for sure. And it's important to recognize that. And I've actually done that before where I've felt like something's out of balance and just let somebody know, sorry, I can't give you money or I can't do this, and just close it there and hopefully just end it instead of them continuing to ask for something. So I think that's it for now. I always think of things afterwards like, I wish I would have said this. I always feel like it'd be nice, like at the end of the week, to have all the thoughts I had after the episode. And if you had any thoughts, you could email me and then I could give them all kind of the rehash of the podcast episode. But anyway, I think that'll be it because I really do have to get ready for my class. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you to my friend Mandy, who told me that I never made my podcast episode or never put the video on YouTube last week. I You usually do it right when I submit the audio one and do it all at once. But I'm playing with new ways to edit because I'm playing with new ways to record and just streamline it. And that's important to me with ADHD, to streamline my system, because I had 2 computers going and, all this. But I knew how to do that, and I'm trying to teach myself this new habit. And thank you again. And be sure to like, subscribe, any of those things if you haven't done it, or leave a review. And I will be back again. Bye.
Help other women find the show. Rate, review, share with someone you know. Help other women find my show. Rate, review, share with someone you know. Hurry before you forget. Open windows, broken shadows. Frozen dreams are left for tomorrow. Without a cause. No time for a pause. The silence of sound has yet been found, but not by me.